Tatam. NFOSI-18 Ovarian Cancer Study Script. Right now, thousands of women are sitting in oncology waiting rooms after their cancer came back, filling out forms about how tired they feel and whether they can climb stairs. And here's the weird part. Nobody actually knew if those forms were working. Like, we've been asking cancer patients to describe their suffering on questionnaires for years, but we never really validated that these questionnaires were actually measuring what we thought they were measuring. This study just did that validation work for ovarian cancer patients in a massive clinical trial. And what they found might change how we understand whether treatments are actually making people's lives better. So the question is, if we've been running major cancer trials for decades, how did we let this gap exist for so long? Let's set the scene. Ovarian cancer is vicious. It comes back. A lot of patients go through treatment, enter remission, and then months or years later, it returns. That's called recurrent ovarian cancer, and it's one of the cruelest parts of the disease. When you're treating it, especially in the phase of the illness where recurrence happens, you want to measure whether your drugs are actually helping. But helping isn't just about survival time anymore. It's also about quality of life. Can you work? Can you exercise? Are you in pain? How exhausted are you? These aren't frivolous questions. For someone fighting recurrent cancer, these things matter as much as, sometimes more than, tacking 6 months onto your life if those months are spent bedridden. So researchers use questionnaires, lots of them. The NFOSI-18 is one of the newer ones. It's designed specifically to measure how cancer and its symptoms affect your physical functioning and overall quality of life. There's also the FACT GP5, which is another validated tool. The problem? Before this study, nobody had really put these questionnaires through their paces in a large-scale recurrent ovarian cancer trial. They were being used, but their reliability was assumed, not proven. That's like driving a car because the manufacturer says it's safe without anyone ever actually crash testing it. This work comes from a massive Phase 3 clinical trial called GY04, which tested new treatments for recurrent ovarian cancer across multiple cancer centers in the United States. The lead team is anchored at Northwestern University, with Xiaodan Tang spearheading the psychometric analysis, supported by researchers at Roswell Park, Memorial Sloan Kettering, the University of Rochester, and dozens of other major cancer institutions. This isn't some boutique study. This is organized under NRG Oncology, a serious heavyweight collaborative group. The paper was published in Gynecologic Oncology in June 2026, which means this is genuinely current science. And it involved literally hundreds of recurrent ovarian cancer patients actually going through the trial, answering these questionnaires repeatedly as their disease progressed and they received treatment. Here's what they did. The GY04 trial enrolled women with recurrent ovarian cancer who were getting new treatment regimens. As part of the trial protocol, these women filled out the NFOSI-18 and FACT GP5 questionnaires at multiple time points, at baseline, during treatment, and at follow-up. Think of it like this. Imagine you're testing a bathroom scale. You don't just weigh yourself once and assume it's accurate. You weigh yourself multiple times, you weigh known objects, you check if the scale gives consistent results, you verify it against other scales. That's psychometric evaluation. The researchers took all those questionnaire responses from hundreds of patients across multiple sites and analyzed whether the questions actually hung together as a coherent measurement tool, whether scores changed when they should change, whether the tools could distinguish between patients who were getting worse and patients who were stable. They looked at something called internal consistency. Do all the questions on the physical symptoms section actually measure physical symptoms? Or are some of them measuring something else entirely? They looked at test-retest reliability. If a patient fills out the form on Monday and again on Wednesday without any medical change, do they get similar scores? They looked at responsiveness. When a patient's condition actually changes, does the questionnaire pick that up? The results are fascinating because they're mostly reassuring, but with important caveats. The NFOSI-18 physical symptoms section showed solid internal consistency, meaning the questions do indeed hang together and seem to measure the same underlying construct. The FACT GP5 also held up. When the researchers tracked patients over time, those questionnaires were sensitive enough to detect real changes in health status. This is actually good news. It means these tools are legitimate. They're not just generating noise. But here's where it gets interesting. The effect sizes weren't uniform. Some aspects of the questionnaires worked better than others. The physical symptom questions were more reliable than some of the more subtle quality of life dimensions. And there were particular time points where the questionnaires were more responsive to change than others. In plain English, the questionnaires work, but they're not magic. They work best when patients have meaningful deterioration or improvement, and they capture physical problems more reliably than they capture emotional or social impacts. The practical implication? We can now be more confident that when a clinical trial using these questionnaires shows improvement in patient-reported outcomes, that improvement is real and measurable, not just noise. But we also know the questionnaires have limitations. If a trial shows a modest improvement in quality of life scores, but doesn't show improvement in physical symptoms specifically, we should be a bit more cautious in interpreting that. The tools work better for some aspects of the patient experience than others. This matters because pharmaceutical companies and researchers use these questionnaires to justify new treatments. If drug A improves quality of life scores on the NFOSI-18, insurance companies and patients might see that as evidence of benefit. Now we know that claim is more valid than we did before, but we also know it's not a universal panacea of measurement. The validation study essentially calibrates our confidence in these tools. It says, here's what these questionnaires can reliably tell you, and here's what they're less good at. It's not as exciting as discovering that a new drug cures cancer, but it's perhaps more important for the long-term integrity of how we measure treatment benefit. This research fits into a broader movement in oncology toward patient-centered outcomes. For decades, cancer medicine was obsessed with survival curves. Did the drug extend life? That's still crucial. But increasingly, the field recognizes that extending survival while leaving someone bedbound or in chronic pain is a hollow victory. Quality of life measurement is becoming co-equal with survival as a trial outcome. But quality of life measurement requires tools, and those tools need validation. This study validates two important tools in the specific context where they matter most: recurrent ovarian cancer treatment. What's still unclear? How these questionnaires perform across different patient populations, different ages, different races, different socio-economic statuses. The GY04 trial drew from major cancer centers, which means it may not perfectly represent ovarian cancer patients treated in community hospitals. We also don't know whether the questionnaires capture what matters most to patients themselves. Researchers designed these tools based on what they thought patients should care about, but qualitative research asking patients what they actually prioritize might reveal gaps. The field is starting to move toward incorporating patient voices more directly into outcomes measurement, and that's probably the next frontier. The most mind-blowing takeaway here is actually about what wasn't questioned before. We've been running major cancer trials for years, asking patients these quality-of-life questions, and we never validated that the questions actually worked. It's like we've been collecting blood pressure data without ever calibrating our blood pressure cuffs. Now that validation exists, our confidence in past and future trial results using these tools gets substantially stronger. The question is, how many other measurement tools in medicine are we using without proper validation? Turns out, scientists have been busy, and they're not done yet.